Hi everyone, it's Brett. I'd say Luigi's Mansion 3 is known as the fun spooky game, but it's much more than that, because you can use a vacuum to play golf. Luigi's Mansion 3 is fun, but before I talk any more about the game itself, I want to talk about when the game was first announced, and the title. Luigi's Mansion 3 was first revealed on September 13th, 2018 in a Nintendo Direct, and at this time, Luigi's Mansion 3 was a working title. It seemed like the game was going to be taking place in a hotel. Then, later, there was another trailer for the game at E3 2019, and the name was still Luigi's Mansion 3, but no longer a working title. So the name was finalized. I wasn't expecting it to be called Luigi's Mansion 3, I was expecting some sort of subtitle. One that I heard at the time was Luigi's Mansion Haunted Hotel. Sounds contradictory because this is the Luigi's Mansion series, but of course the Luigi's Mansion name by itself is contradictory because there's no mansion in this game. The original game was called Luigi's Mansion, and the second game had Luigi's Mansion as the main title, so I think sticking with Luigi's Mansion for the main title is the way to go, even if it doesn't make sense. Luigi's Mansion 3 as the official title is fine with me. Out of curiosity though, there's gotta be a title that would make a lot more sense for this game. I'm sure I could think of something. Anyway, Luigi's Mansion 3 was released on October 31st, 2019. The game begins with a very well-crafted cutscene. Basically, Luigi, Mario, Peach, and some Toads are invited to stay at the Last Resort Hotel. Once everyone is inside, Luigi can check in, and Helen Gravely, who is the owner of the hotel, greets everybody and shows them to their rooms. They say goodnight to each other, even though they arrived not too long ago during daylight, and Luigi cracks open a book and sleeps. He then wakes up to a much less inviting hotel. Slowly, the rest of the illusion disappears, and Luigi finds King Boo, who has escaped his cell from the second Luigi's Mansion game. I like that King Boo still has this menacing feel to him from the previous games. Anyway, King Boo is back to capture Luigi, but he escapes getting captured, and his job is to find everybody who did get captured. I really like how the game starts off, and it's easy to tell that you're in for a fun time. The gameplay here is quite fun, and Luigi has plenty of ways to interact with ghosts and the environment. There's the basic vacuum abilities that the previous games had. The strobe bulb and dark light device that were introduced in the second Luigi's Mansion game are here too. There's some new moves like the blast that shoots Luigi up in the air and a plunger projectile that can be used to slam objects. There's also Luigi, and he is stored in Luigi's vacuum. He can be let out and can go through vents and other things. He is pretty much just like Luigi, except that he is completely green, dissolves in water, has no emotions, and looks like he resides in my lava lamp. Every ability can be quite enjoyable to use. All these abilities help out with solving puzzles and dealing with ghosts. Speaking of dealing with ghosts, there's a new ghost slamming ability. Once you've drained enough of the ghost's health, you can press A to slam them all over the place, even on other ghosts. It's a fun move to use, however, I feel like it can become kind of simple. It just feels a little overpowered sometimes. It doesn't take long to be able to use the slam, and ghosts usually become easy to deal with while you're slamming. This is just a minor problem for me. There does happen to be some depth to the slam ability that I should mention. Having to aim the direction the ghosts are to hit them provides some strategy. You can slam ghosts even faster and a few more times than usual if you time your inputs correctly, and you can also slam ghosts much less and just capture them in place if you want. The slam mechanic is overall a very creative move, and I did have fun using it for the most part. Although I would have preferred for the slam move to be a little less overpowered by maybe making it take longer before it can be used. I also would have liked there to be a dodge move to make the ghost catching more interesting. Even though I would want some changes to the ghost combat, I'd say that overall, catching ghosts in general is very fun. Of course, none of this ghost catching could be possible without the help of Professor Egad. He's the inventor of the vacuum Luigi uses, which is called the Poltergust. Egad is found shortly after the Poltergust is acquired. Yeah, he fell for the same trap like everybody else. Egad's such an odd character, but that's what makes him so great. Eventually, his lab is up and running. I like the setup here, and I'd say that this serves as a nice hub. Well, I'll get to talking about the floors now. The game is divided up into 17 floors, and the only way to get to most of the floors is through the elevator. I think this elevator is great. It's just fun to click the button and wait for the sliding doors to open. Also, I appreciate the big mirror. It makes the elevator more interesting. Having an elevator to advance to other floors is a pretty clever way to not have to use an actual loading screen. You can mess around while waiting to get to the next floor, and that's much more exciting than looking at a loading screen. Alright, I got a little sidetracked by the elevator. I'll get back to talking about the floors in the game. There are some basic floors that are quite fitting for the hotel setting. These are all pretty nice. There also happens to be some other floors that you wouldn't think would be in a hotel. Some examples of that would be the castle floor and the Egyptian floor. This means some floors end up feeling more like a theme park than an actual hotel. While it's not very consistent for a hotel to have these kind of themes, it is quite creative and gives the hotel a lot of variety. However, it does seem strange to have a really big room filled with sand. Most floors end up being isolated as their own little separate levels. All the floors in the game are not equal in size and length. Some floors are quite large with plenty of puzzles and rooms, while other floors are more of just a boss area with a hall and a few rooms. It's nice to have floors that vary in length, but sometimes it feels like some floors could have had more going on in them. Then again, the smaller floors usually hold a bigger in scope boss fight, so it balances out. There's a lot of floors I really like. Twisted Sweets has such a fun theme. It's pretty much a magic trick floor. There's a whole lot of puzzles and cool, visually interesting rooms while sticking with the hotel theme. The fitness floor is really good too. It's nothing mind-blowing, just stuff you would see at a gym, but I think it really nails the theme. The Boiler Works is awesome. There's a ton of pipes and it has this whole sewer section. This floor is quite convenient for Luigi. He can use his plumbing and ghost catching skills in one spot. These are just some of the floors that I enjoyed, but there's a whole lot of other well-made floors. There are plenty of unique floors, and with all the different floor themes also came with bosses to match them. The boss ghosts are an awesome thing to be included. They are expressive, unique characters, and most of them are fun to fight. These character type of ghosts were in the first Luigi's Mansion game, but weren't really prevalent in the second game. It's good to see the character ghosts back in Luigi's Mansion 3. The piano player ghost that possesses a piano is a standout boss. He has plenty of attacks and avoiding them is pretty fun. Most of the bosses are pretty good in this game, but now it's time to talk about something that doesn't matter that much, but I happen to care about it. For some reason, Boolossus is in the Scarescraper side mode, but not on the main story of Luigi's Mansion 3. Now I'll explain why I don't like this, but first, I'll give some context. Boolossus is a boss that is 15 boos that merge together and is fought in the first Luigi's Mansion game. There was no multiplayer mode in the original Luigi's Mansion, so Boolossus is of course in the main game. Now the second game also had a Big Boo boss in the main story, and that game had a Scarescraper side mode. The Big Boo in the second game might not have been Boolossus, but that's a whole other topic that I'm not going to be getting into. The point is that fighting a whole bunch of boos that combine together has been in the main story of the previous games, so I don't like that Luigi's Mansion 3 broke that consistency. I was kind of surprised that I didn't encounter Boolossus in the hotel of the main game. It just feels like tradition to have Boolossus, or at least a Big Boo, in the main game of Luigi's Mansion, so not having that type of boss here just feels off to me. I feel like the developers could have put Boolossus in the main game. All that would need to be done is to make a Boo-themed floor, or they could have had the player backtrack through one of the floors and find some sort of room or balcony to fight Boolossus on. I think I have an idea on why Boolossus isn't in the main game. It seems like Boolossus was put in the game towards the end of development because he borrows animations and moves from the final boss of the game. The developers might have made most of the game and thought, "Oh no, we forgot Boolossus," and then proceeded to just put him in Scarescraper. Boolossus only being in the Scarescraper mode doesn't mess with the overall quality of the game. I just wanted him to be in the main game. Well, might as well talk about the boos some more. There's one boo on each floor in the game except the last floor. These guys show up later when you backtrack to a floor that has been completed. Once they are found, they can be slammed around many times. Boos serve as a nice little optional challenge. Something I should mention is all the random items you can put inside your vacuum. So many things will fly right in. Not even the couch cushions are safe. One of the main things you'll find flying in your vacuum is money. This stuff is a staple in the Luigi's Mansion series. It's definitely fun to collect, but there isn't much you can do with it. You can buy 3 things, and that's it. This is where an upgrade system could have come in handy. It would be cool to get upgrades for the Poltergust to make it faster at catching ghosts once you've acquired enough money. This would give a good reason to collect money. The second game had an upgrade system, so why not have one in the third game? Anyway, I should mention the animations in the game. All the cutscenes have so much personality with super detailed movements that are incredibly fluid. The animation is on another level. Also, the music is pretty good. Not all tracks knock it out of the park, but there's a lot of good ones here. The art style is also well done. It really goes for that stylized cartoon look. I still like the more realistic style of the first game. I also just like the eerie atmosphere of the first game more. Luigi's Mansion 3's art style and atmosphere is still good though. It's just more lighthearted. It really comes down to personal opinion with this kind of stuff. The amount of detail in Luigi's Mansion 3 is great. I admire how a lot of the different floors get a different elevator arrow, as well as a really nice door pattern that represents the floor's theme. The look of the game is super well done. I'll give an honorable mention to the Toads. They are pretty funny and can be shot super far. Well, the final button to be acquired is the one that leads Luigi to the last floor. That's right, I'm talking about the end of the game. For 50 seconds, I'll talk about the end game, starting right now. The final floor is a pretty good way to top off the game. It's got lasers, copious amounts of dust, and a whole lot of King Boo themed stuff. I don't know why Helen Gravely admires King Boo this much, but it's kinda weird. Anyway, this is a great final floor to test your skills, and it is one of the most visually pleasing floors with all the expensive materials used. Helen Gravely is a fun little boss, but let's talk about the final boss, King Boo. Yeah, so this is the boss where Boolossus borrowed most of his attacks and animations. This is a pretty tough boss fight, and King Boo has a variety of attacks, including using his tongue. Slamming him is the only way to capture him. I would have liked there to be a section in the fight where you have to vacuum him up like the other ghosts, but it's still a decent fight that serves as a nice final challenge. In the end, Luigi defeats King Boo, saves everybody, and takes a nap with his ghost dog. So yeah, that's the end of the main game. I'll go ahead and briefly mention the multiplayer side modes now. There's the Scream Park multiplayer mode. Didn't really play this one that much, but it's a neat little inclusion. There's also the Scarescraper multiplayer mode that I mentioned earlier. This one can be fun. There's an objective you have to complete on each floor. You have to complete each floor under a certain amount of time or else you lose. Once you get to the final floor, you fight Boolossus. I already talked about this guy a whole bunch earlier, so I don't really have anything else to say. 2 DLC packs were available sometime after the game released. Some of the things included were costumes and new minigames. It looks fun. I haven't bought them. Well, that's Luigi's Mansion 3. I overall enjoyed it a lot, and there was obviously a ton of effort put into this game. Luigi's Mansion 3 is really great. Oh, I thought of a title that makes sense. So there happens to be a third floor in the game, which means the game could have just been called 3.